I experienced 4 terrifying real cases of déjà vu that pushed me to the edge of sanity. I never should have opened that door. Curiosity can lead to awful places. I was just a normal person, going through life, minding my own business, when the first wave hit me. An ordinary Tuesday suddenly twisted. I was in my living room, sunlight streaming through the window, a sense of calm settling in my chest. But that calm was shattered when I felt that dizzying shiver, the prickling at the back of my neck. Déjà vu. It washed over me like a cold wave, a moment draped in shadows, the light flickered. It was the first sign. The air thickened. An icy draft clawed at my skin. I glanced around, but nothing had changed. Or had it? I could swear I'd seen my couch in a different position. Whispers danced through the air, mist and memory swirling. Were they murmurs of past lives or just my imagination playing tricks? I wanted to retreat, but something pulled me closer. Then came the second case. I was at work, sitting at my desk, surrounded by the familiar buzz of voices and ringing phones. It felt like déjà vu surged through me again. I looked up, expecting to see the coffee pot boiling or my boss charging in with news, but I saw nothing. Just the same stilled faces, charting routine. The clock ticked loudly, but I felt suspended in an echo. I reached for my stapler, but as my fingers brushed the cold metal, I knew I had done this before, but when? My heart raced, pounding against my ribs. I was trapped in a haunting loop. Then it happened again, late at night. Darkness pressed against my window, casting monstrous shadows across my walls. I lay in bed, sheets tangling around my legs. As I drifted into sleep, it struck me for the third time. An insidious sense. I blinked, and it all morphed. The moonlight flickered like a dying candle. I swear I had heard the tapping, but it was all in my head, right? Then a scream echoed, piercing the silence. Was it real, or another memory coiling around me? I felt paralyzed, heart thundering, heartache crawling up my throat. Finally, the last case hit in a place I thought was safe. A cafe, vibrant and bustling. I took a sip of my coffee, but as I glanced around, déjà vu slammed into me once more. Every face around me shifted and warped. The laughter morphed into ghastly whispers. I suddenly saw, was that me in the corner? A ghost of my past life, sipping my drink, eyes hollow and vacant. Cold horror clawed its way through me, tightening my chest, constricting my breath. There was no escaping it. The sense of unfamiliar familiarity. I was losing grip. My mind reeled. With every instance, the line separating reality from the surreal blurred further. The walls were closing in. I could feel them, shadows creeping closer, whispering secrets meant for someone else. I was not myself anymore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. When the final echo of déjà vu faded, it left behind an oppressive silence that felt like a prison. I had hoped to escape the chaos of those moments, but it only twisted tighter around me, smothering every ounce of peace. Days turned into weeks, each one folding into a blanket of uncertainty. My once vivid world now resembled an unfinished puzzle, pieces missing and others fitting only too perfectly in their wrong places. That I had begun to notice the flicker in my surroundings again. The light in my living room, once warm and inviting, now throbbed with a distant white flicker, reminiscent of an old movie projector displaying a terrifying film, the kind that gripped you in its gaze, refusing to let go. I shouldn't have glanced back at it, but my instincts led me towards it, a moth to an incandescent flame. That evening, I grasped my phone, its surface cool against my clammy palm. Desperately, I scrolled through the endless void of social media, searching for something to ground me. My eyes met a photo shared in a local group. It was a forgotten carnival, long abandoned, its Ferris wheel rusting beneath a thin veil of fog. I recognized it, but not from any conscious memory. The photo triggered a sensation of suppressed fear and confusion, reawakening the deep-seated dread within me. I was there, longer ago than I could remember. The weekend drew me into the carnival's haunting embrace. The air felt thick with memories, timeless, where the laughter of children was fused with their ghostly echoes. The path was littered with remnants of a past joy, cracked porcelain clowns, tattered red and white striped tents billowing in the wind like sails of a lost ship. Shadows haunted every corner, shifting just beyond my line of sight. I could feel them, slinking away just as I caught a glimpse, but this time, déjà vu was only the beginning. I could hear the distant sound of carnival music, played on a record player long abandoned, crackling and popping through the stillness. I followed the sound, my heart thundering. It compelled me inward, deeper than any simple exploration. I traversed through pathways where memories collided with the wind, swirling like autumn leaves. As I neared the center of the carnival, a darkened circus tent loomed overhead, larger than life. My breath caught in my throat as I approached, hesitant yet drawn in by an invisible tether. The flaps of the entrance shivered in an unseen breeze, inviting me to step inside. I swallowed hard, pushing past the fear clinging to my ribs, and crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was thick and heavy. Dim light peeked through the fabric walls, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters yearning to connect. The inside was a forgotten realm, a carnival frozen in time. A faint light flickered from a stage where an old, stained ringmaster's costume lay sprawled, as though someone might return at any moment. I shivered and took a step closer, and then, things took a monstrous turn. From somewhere in the darkness, the music swelled louder, a twisted, nightmarish version of the carefree tunes I had heard earlier. The light's flickering grew erratic, illuminating patches of the space where a thick mist began to rise, curling at my ankles. I could feel it in my bones. Someone, or something, was watching me from beyond the veil, enthralling me with a gaze filled with a sorrow so deep it could crush the strongest of souls. In that moment, I caught sight of a figure in the far corner of the tent, its form obscured by shadows, but its eyes too dark. Endless pools stared back at me, drawing me in. It was a reflection of me and yet completely other, a grotesque mask of my own face twisted in anguish. You're not supposed to be here, a voice rasped, echoing in the empty space around me. It pierced through the veil of music and memories, pulling me into a whirlpool of despair. I wanted to flee, but my feet remained cemented to the ground, the terror coursing through me, paralyzing every muscle. Suddenly, the tent walls began to close in, the edges curling toward me, suffocating the air around me. I was trapped in a storm of shadows and fragmented memories, and before I could comprehend the horror unfolding, the ground beneath me shattered, revealing a swirling darkness teeming with whispers and mournful cries. Join us, the echoing voice hissed as the shadows roared louder, revealing the forgotten souls of the carnival, faces twisted in anguish, mouths wide in silent screams. Then, as the last thread of light disappeared, a cold hand gripped mine from the darkness, pulling me into the depths of despair, and just like that, everything went black. When I awoke, my senses were overwhelmed by an unfamiliar stench, pungent and heavy like decayed wood. I jolted upright, panic coursing through me as I thrashed about to find myself surrounded by suffocating shadows. The tent was gone, replaced by an expanse of blackness. An abyss. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged, just the haunting echoes of my desperate mind. Fragments of thoughts crashed against the walls of my consciousness like waves pounding on a stormy shore. Where am I? What happened? My heart raced, drumming a frantic rhythm that reverberated in the deserted void. Instinctively, I reached for my phone, but instead of its familiar weight, my hand met only a coarse surface that felt like cold earth. I was lying on the ground, a rough, uneven floor, a graveyard for secrets long buried. Help. I finally managed to choke out, the word dissolving into silence, lost in the darkness. But as I strained my ears to listen, intrigued whispers wove through the air. They danced around me, taunting, intertwining with the beating of my heart. With every frantic thought that clawed at my mind, I noticed the whispers receded for a heartbeat before fluttering back like moths drawn to a light that threatened to extinguish. Suddenly, the suffocating gloom around me began to pulsate, rippling in rhythmic waves that echoed the somber whispers. The darkness ebbed slightly, revealing a vast expanse, a nightmarish carnival decorated with gallows and cages, each enclosure draped in the tattered remnants of what once were vibrant colors. The air hung thick, almost charged, and a drumming beat reverberated through my very bones, an invitation or a warning, I couldn't tell. Something stirred in the shadows, something far more malevolent than before. My breath caught in my throat as I glimpsed figures creeping along the periphery, their faces obscured by swirling darkness, eyes glowing like embers of ancient fires holding age-old tales of torment and despair. For a split second, I thought I recognized one of them, a twisted familiarity wrapped around me, a former version of myself lost within the vault of nightmares that a low growl echoed from the depths, primal and rumbling, vibrating through the very fabric of my being. I tore my gaze away, summoning every ounce of will to scramble to my feet. Stumbling forward, I spotted a path lingering just outside the edge of the barely illuminated expanse. It stretched infinitely, an inviting passage tattooed with warped shapes that seemed to morph and breathe, beckoning me with a terrible allure. My instinct screamed at me to run, yet my legs felt like lead. Checking my surroundings, I realized the dark figures were inching closer, their hollow eyes fixated on me with a hunger I could almost taste, a desperate longing that exceeded any tangible mortal craving. They stirred as one, tendrils of pure black reaching and lurching, brushing against the cold air and sending shivers down my spine. Join us, a voice wailed from the darkness, sounding like a lament from the very souls of those lost to the horror. The boundaries are thin here, every pain is reflected, every memory tortured. That I began to sprint, propelled by terror toward the path, toward the swirl of possible escape. The shadows shrieked, their unearthly lament crescendoing as panic skyrocketed within me. I felt a sharp pain sear across my ankle, the icy fingers of dread grasping hold, threatening to drag me back into the abyss. That I stumbled and fell hard, dust swirled around me, mixing with the fear-laden air. In that moment of despair, I saw her, a figure emerging from the shadows, clad in a flowing white gown, the fabric ethereal and familiar. My heart twisted, a malevolent sense of recognition vied for acknowledgement. It was me, yet not me, a twisted reflection framed by sorrow. My own face marred by grief, eyes glimmering with the promise of understanding and despair. Help me find the way back, I cried, desperately reaching out, but she only shook her head, her expression tormenting. You cannot escape what you are. The shadows howled, their cries merging into a cacophony of anguish that pierced through the void, enveloping me in a swirling storm. I felt the darkness clawing at my sanity, consuming every fragment of light. I had to escape this torment. I had to. Then her voice transformed, twisting into the very echoes of my own fears. Stay with us. And with that relentless chant, the shadows surged forward, swallowing me whole. That I and the oppressive pitch of despair, a single thought crossed my mind. Would I ever emerge again as myself? Did I even want to? And then a blinding light exploded before me, momentarily scattering the haze of darkness. I was staggered by the searing brilliance, an unbearable contrast from the emptiness that had enveloped me. My senses sharpened, and for an eternal breath, I felt hope rising within, but the moment shattered like glass, revealing a horrifying truth. I and that blinding light, reflected in the shards surrounding me, I saw countenances, hundreds of my own distorted faces, each one screaming silently, begging not to be forgotten, grasping their own cascading memories of suffering. Their mouths formed words, "You'll never escape, you belong to the carnival now." As the brightness dimmed, the shadows surged once more, and I realized with a cold jolt, among the familiar faces one was smiling. I and the haze of twilight, I could hear the unmistakable laughter from the far corner of the carnival. A laughter that sent ripples of dread and a haunting sense of recognition rushing through my veins, and just as I turned to face it, I felt another presence behind me, dark and suffocating, whispering into my ear, "You should have never returned." The laughter continued and faded into a low, echoing buzz. The darkness wove tighter around me, and something in its depths was awakening. My heart raced as the laughter pulsated, echoing off the dilapidated structures that surrounded me. The abused remnants of once vibrant attractions loomed like haggard specters, their twisted metal frameworks clawing at the night sky, creating disturbing silhouettes against the waning light. My thoughts were a mess of confusion and dread as the realization dawned. This place was alive, breathing with the essence of countless souls spiraled into torment, and I was an unwilling participant in its sinister games. The presence behind me tugged at my awareness, a tangible weight pressing against my back, urging me to succumb to the darkness. I felt its chilling breath, phantom-like and heavy, whispering secrets intended to unravel my sanity. "You will know pain, you will know joy, but freedom, it is a lie," it hissed, a voice that twisted my own fears into visceral realities. Spinning around, I beheld a face I recognized, another me. A cruel parody of my expression swathed in shadows, draped in an aura of twisted comfort as if it were reveling in my horror. "Welcome back," it cooed, the voice like ice water flooding my veins. "You were always meant to find your way to us." That I staggered backward, my instinct screaming for retreat, but the world around me contorted, pulling me deeper into this waking nightmare. I stumbled onto the path, its surface shifting and writhing beneath my feet as though it were alive, so alive. The whispers grew louder, demanding my attention, begging me to listento remember. Suddenly, the gaudy remnants of the carnival erupted in distorted color, flickering with chaotic energies as if the shadows themselves were unable to contain the ferocity they housed. Each horror, each soul lost, collided in a cacophony of terror, but amid this all, there was one powerful voice: "Join us." It resonated through the carnival, sending tremors through the ground below me. Become part of the eternal revelry. Embrace your fears. Embrace your past. In the haze of anguished memories, I recalled my traumas, those moments of despair that had haunted me long before this twisted carnival had enticed me. Instantly, uninvited flashes of deep-seated regrets assaulted my mind like thunder, only to amalgamate into a single Imagean image of a young boy who had once looked up to me. "Ethan!" I gasped, anguish slicing through the humorless carnival air. "No. I can't relive that. Not here." The laughter rang out again, mixing with a chorus of distant cries, a spectacle dancing joyfully on the fringes of my consciousness. "Ethan belongs to us now, like all of us," the shadow of me mocked, its voice laced with excitement. "He will find you again, just like you found him. Isn't that what you always wanted? To know?" "No. I didn't want this." I screamed back, but the air warped with mirthful denial. "Ah, but you must pay the price for your knowledge," said another figure stepping from the haze, its face a ghastly mask of familiarity as if it were cut from my very own reflection, eyes devoid of life but brimming with sinister intent. "The carnival demands your memories, your pain. Every face here echoes with your past. Every shadow a memory of yours, clamoring for release." That I turned violently, heart pounding with every blink, desperate to escape this web of anguish. But with each step I took, the laughing shadows danced closer around me, their ghastly forms shifting and curling like smog. In their midst, I saw Ethan again, tethered and ensnared within the joyous chaos, a jovial expression painted across his face like a cruel parody of innocence lost. I lunged forward, desperation clawing through me. "Ethan! You don't belong here, and neither do you," the Marcus shadow echoed, its voice a cold dagger. "We belong to the carnival." Together, the shadows surged again, swarming over me, clinging to my skin, burdening me with the weight of their existence. I fought back, clawing at the tendrils that sought to envelope me, the pulsating darkness eating at my resolve. The carnival's laughter morphed into screams, vibrating around me as if the very ground beneath my feet wept for the souls. Trapped here, but through the chaos and despair, a distant melody rose, a haunting tune carried through the night, something vaguely familiar yet jarring. I paused, grasping the sound as it wrapped around me like the last vestiges of sanity. I had to find it, I had to, and as the shadows closed in, the melody surged louder, cutting through the veil of despair. A voice within the laughter screeched, "He will come for you. You cannot hide from what you've created." And then, right before my eyes, the crowd of shadows parted, revealing a figure striding confidently toward me, a child, head held high, familiar blue eyes piercing through the darkness. "Ethan. Are you ready to join the carnival?" he asked, a grin split across his face, innocent yet terrifying, and just as my heart threatened to rip apart, the ground trembled violently, splintering beneath me, drawing me into a whirlpool of darkness as the carnival writhed with a newfound frenzy. That I was standing at the precipice of my greatest fear, and as the carnival roared around me, I understood the terrible truth: escape was merely an illusion. Ethan reached out, his hand poised above the abyss, and whispered, "You can't escape, and I've been waiting for you." The world twisted, shadows expanding until I was consumed by a starless void, all sound fading into a chilling silence, save for the echo of Ethan's laughter, deep and knowing. And then, silence fell. As the silence enveloped me, that utter stillness became a pulsing heartbeat, throbbing in sync with an unbearable menace. The darkness was so thick, so suffocating, that it felt as though it were carving out my identity, leaving me a hollow shell. I grasped at my memories, yearning to feel solid ground beneath my feet, but they slipped away like smoke in the wind, leaving me adrift in an eternal night. Suddenly, faint flickers of light began to emerge around me, twinkling yellow orbs that danced like lost fireflies, illuminating a ragged path. As they grew in brightness, shapes began to take form among the swaying shadows. I realized I was not alone. Faces emerged from the gloom, hollow, pleading, desperate, each echoing the void I now inhabited. A chorus of ghostly onlookers formed a garish audience, their eyes glistening with unshed tears of torment and longing. "Join us," a voice howled, mingling with the soft whispers of the broken souls. Their plea was a cacophony of sorrow mingling with an unyielding sweetness that sowed a deep dread in my stomach. As I stepped forward, drawn by the glowing lights, the faces twisted inwards, melting into grotesque masks of despair. I turned away, only to find a wall of darkness waiting behind me where no wall should exist. Panic surged. Where was I? The carnival had drained me of reason, leaving only primal instinct, fight or flight. Then the melody resumed, now tainted and warped, a haunting lullaby that beckoned with all the warmth of a loving embrace yet carried an undercurrent of malice. It danced around my ears, pulling me back toward the shadows. Suddenly, the lights flickered erratically and transformed into flickering images, scenes from my own life. Played out like a twisted movie reel. There was Ethan again, standing before an old, paint-chipped merry-go-round, his tiny hands clutching tightly to the horse's mane. The expression on his face was a curious blend of excitement and fear. "Look, Aunt. Look at me," he had exclaimed that day, a day I chose to dismiss me, obligations and fears clouding the joy he yearned to share. Tears stung my eyes as the images shifted, replacing the joy with pain. I saw the last moment we shared, the accident that took him away from me. The icy grip of guilt coiled around my heart, squeezing tighter with every passing memory. "I should have saved you," I choked, my voice barely a whisper, the weight of my regret pressing me further into the dirt. "Save us all," a disembodied voice sang from the shadows, merging with the eerie melody. The faces shifted closer, their expressions pleading, desperate. "You can make it right. Just join us." The shadows writhed, intertwining with my memories, clawing at my mind, twisting my sorrow into bitter offerings. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, my voice cracking with desperation. "Your choices, your regrets, they feed the carnival," they chorused, a terrible unison that shook the very core of my being. "Feed us, and we shall grant you eternal peace." That I stumbled backward, wild-eyed, only to feel a presence pressing in upon me. From the vortex of shadows emerged a figure, its edges blurred but undeniably familiar. A version of myself, an echo draped in grief. "You are not alone," it whispered, voice thick with desolation. No. I shrieked, knowing its touch held only despair. "You're not real. None of this is." But with each denial, the world contorted. The carnival around me began to dissolve, revealing flashes of my past, each moment a haunting reminder of choices unmade and promises broken. Ethan's laughter morphed into wails as his face melted away into countless others, everyone ID lost, their voices merging into a mournful symphony. "Join us," they begged again, their hands reaching out, fingers twisted and spectral, ominous and urgent. The air thickened with their presence, suffocating me. As I fought against the crushing weight of grief, something cold wrapped around my throat, claustrophobic and tightening. I gasped, pulling at the invisible noose as the figures pressed closer, becoming a mass of pleading shadows that threatened to envelop me. Whole, yet amidst the despair, I felt a breaking point, a burgeoning fire, an irrepressible spark kindled by relentless determination. "No. I will save you." I screamed defiantly, the words leaving my lips like a sacred vow. I felt the weight of the carnival's promise pressing down on me, edging me closer to surrender. But just as hope sparked, a deafening cry erupted from within the depths of darkness. "Then let the carnival eat your heart." And a blinding flash erupted from the shadows, sending my body hurtling backwards like a marionette whose strings had been cut. That I landed hard, splattering onto the ground like a fallen fruit, and when I opened my eyes, I was inexplicably free, lying on the brittle grass under a swirling sky painted with an absurd array of colors. Around me, shadows swirled violently, containing all the faces of the lost, hurling their anguished cries like arrows through the air. They began to coalesce, shadows intertwining into grotesque creatures swinging on phantom swings. I was surrounded by a carnival of nightmares. Each face twisted, eyes wide with an otherworldly madness, their bodies shifting and writhing as they pulled me in with greedy hands. "Let's play forever," they chanted, voices shrill with delight. And just when I felt their chill drawing me into the vortex, I heard a single voice rise above the cacophony. "Your heart is my canvas." It shrieked, and as the shadows surged one last time, everything went black. And that empty silence, I felt an inkling of dread and knowledge that even my deepest fears were but a prelude to something far worse. Then, a familiar melody began anew, slowly crescendoing into an unbearable cacophony of joy and despair. I stood at the edge of the carnival, and I realized I was not just an unwilling participant. I was its puppet, and now, the real show was about to begin. The carnival would feed tonight. And as my body stationed itself once more among the revelry, I swore I could feel another heartbeat synchronized with my own, echoing the anticipation of all that was to come. The carnival's vibrant chaos began to blur around me, the frenzied colors bleeding together in a kaleidoscope of horror and ecstasy. I felt detached, a mere spectator to my own demise, as if I were floating above the ground, watching a puppet dance on trembling strings. The shadows around me continued to shape-shift, melding into grotesque visagesmentful screams mingling with laughter that echoed louder, like a twisted symphony building to a crescendo. Each heartbeat in that nightmarish carnival resonated with a familiarity that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Time warped around me as memories surged, each moment a spectral hand reaching out, pulling me deeper into the unrelenting grip of the carnival's embrace. I could feel the sticky tendrils of regret weaving through my veins, whispering to me of the truths I dared not face. Then I caught sight of a flickering light ahead, brighter than before, pulsating with an allure that felt both inviting and cursed. The very air around it crackled with tension. Instinctively, I knew I had to see what lay beneath its incandescent glow. The thrumming of the unseen heartbeat grew louder, and I was compelled to follow. As I approached, the world twisted into a hall of faded photographs, each frame encapsulating a moment of untold horror. Faces loomed out of the darkness, eyes wide with terror, their mouths forming silent screams. Panic seized me as I recognized someone among the lost salsa woman whose voice merged with the melody that now ensnared me. It was my mother, her countenance etched with despair, urging me silently to break free from the carnival's snare. "Run. Don't look back." Her lips formed the words, and though no sound accompanied them, I felt the weight of her desperation wrap around my heart like a vice. It was then I understood the carnival was not just feeding on sorrow. It thrived on the bonds we shared, the connections severed by tragedy that trapped our souls in its endless grasp. Before I could react, the shadows erupted around me, merging into a single monstrous form that reached for me, its mouth contorting into an unnatural grin. I stumbled back, heart racing, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The closer I got to that radiant light, the stronger the presence of turmoil became, a turbulent sea of emotions threatening to engulf me. Suddenly, the darkness shimmered, revealing not only horrors but vices and victories intertwined grotesquely. I witnessed fragments of my life beyond the grip of guilt, the joy and hope I had abandoned in pursuit of glorified regret. Each memory was a card in a perverse deck, reshuffling my past, illuminating the chasms of potential I never dared to explore. "Join us," said the echoes, sounding now as a chorus of maimed ecstasy. "Take your place among the lost." "No," I screamed, desperate to reject their haunting offer. I recoiled, clenching my fists in defiance. In that moment of raw emotion, I felt power swell inside me, a fire ignited by the anger of years spent wallowing in grief, mourning the bonds I should have cherished. Yet, amidst this flicker of hope, something threatened to extinguish my flame. The lights around me dimmed, plunging back into menacing shadows as a churning darkness began to enfold my vision. Panic surged anew as I stumbled forward, desperate for the beacon of light. The carnival roared with life, its cycle feeding off my despair, and I realized my fight was far from over. "Your heart is our playground." A voice snarled through the cacophony, echoing like thunder, cracking the very foundations of my reality. With every ounce of strength, I clawed towards that flickering light, driven by suffocating dread. The shadows howled in rage, their fingers grasping and tearing against my skin, trying to reclaim what little spark I had left. Just as I reached the glimmer, the ground beneath me fractured. And then it happened, everything cracked wide open. I was plunged into a pit of cold nothingness, the sound of frenzied laughter dissipating into an echoing silence that threatened to crush me. I desperately gasped for breath as I fell, my heart racing with a mix of dread and an irrefutable awareness that this descent was not an escape but a prelude to something far worse. And then, just as the void threatened to claim me, a single, fragmented whisper reached my ears. "You left us once, don't think you can run again." With that final dissonant note, I felt the shadows latch onto my very soul, tugging at the remnants of what made me whole. I spiraled into an abyss of dark, terrifying uncertainty, knowing that whatever awaited me at the bottom would probe deeper than mere memory. I was on the brink of unveiling a truth buried within me, a truth that could either save me or drag me further into a fate worse than death. And as the darkness welcomed me, I realized with a chilling sense of inevitability, I might not be alone down there after all. The weight of the darkness pressed against me, a living tapestry weaving itself into my skin. I floated aimlessly in that void, each heartbeat a reminder that I still existed, though the sensation felt increasingly ludicrous. Time lost its meaning, stretching and twisting like the grotesque forms I had glimpsed in the carnival's cacophony. It felt like an eternity held within the confines of an instant, each fleeting moment sharpening the pang of anguish that thrummed through my bones. Suddenly, an energy pulsed around me that felt oddly familiar and yet entirely alien. The shadows began to coalesce, shaping themselves into figures that stood motionless, their expressions a silent testament to countless souls who had succumbed to this hellish realm. I caught the glint of something in their eyes, a shimmer of recognition, as though they watched me with an agonized awareness of my plight. I gasped, but no sound emerged. Instead, only the echo of my own unvoiced dread filled the air. Then, like a jolt of electricity, I felt a pull, a magnetic force dragging me towards something unseen, deeper into the abyss. The faces around me melted away into the darkness, leaving only a faint whispering trail of their silent screams. "Help us," they seemed to murmur, their voices a haunting chorus that slid under my skin. That I, in the midst of the swirling void, an incandescent glow pierced through, beckoning me like a taunting mirage. It flickered with the same allure that had drawn me in before, yet this time, it felt malevolent, gnarled fingers reaching out from an unseen entity, promising liberation but with an underlying current of despair. I had to resist. I had to fight against whatever gnawed at the corners of my mind, urging me toward that siren's call. With a monumental effort, I tried to anchor myself in place, shouting against the shrouded silence, "I won't let you take me." But my defiance dissolved like mist, lost in the gaping maw of the void. As I was pulled deeper, visions struck me like shards of glass, memories etched in pain that tormented me. I glimpsed my childhood home, how warm and inviting it had once been before the shadows crept in, twisting the walls and filling every nook with despair. I saw my mother, the light in her eyes flickering as she reached for me, her hands trembling in fear as darkness enveloped her. "No!" I screamed, fighting the hold the abyss had on me. "I won't abandon you again." At that very moment, a chorus of laughter erupted from the shadows, their mirth rich with malice. "You were never alone," they chanted, echoing like thunder around me. "You left, but we've always been here." Frozen in place, I felt an insidious understanding burrow into the depths of my mind. They were right. I had left them to wallow in the darkness while I had chased after fleeting joys, numbing myself with distractions that had later become chains. Each moment I had ignored my grief had fed the very abyss I now faced. The air grew thicker as something unfurled from the darkness, stretching long tentacles of grandeur and pain toward me. I felt the world slipping away me, history, my essence wrenching apart, strand by strand. "Join us, embrace your truth," the whispers urged, their voices now individual, pleading, desperate. Just then, a figure emerged from the swirling cauldron of shadows, the unmistakable silhouette of my mother, as I had last seen her, frail and ghost-like. But her eyes were no longer sorrowful, they blazed with a fierce light that rendered the shadows momentarily impotent. "You carry their burden. You cannot carry mine too," she implored, her voice echoing with an otherworldly timbre that held power. Before I could respond, a pair of cold, unyielding hands gripped my shoulders from behind. The touch ignited a jolt of fear, paralyzing me as I recognized the specter, another face from my past. It was Sarah, a childhood friend I had abandoned in college, lost in a web of confusion and emotional turmoil. Her eyes mirrored the same anguish I had seen in the lost souls of the carnival, tainted with rage and sorrow, pushing against the confines of my haunted existence. Why did you leave? She screamed, and as she did, the ground beneath us began to shake violently, fissures splitting open around me like yawning chasms, threatening to pull us all into the depths of despair. Instead of fear, a chilling clarity washed over me. Here I was plunged into the echoes of my choices, and the very people I'd thought I had left behind were now my tether to this dark realm. As the chaos escalated, I sensed a malevolent presence coiling closer, an unseen watcher who thrived on the ever-growing turbulence. You thought your past was gone, forgotten, it hissed, its voice laced with venom. But it lives on in each regret, each forgotten connection. An earth-shattering roar erupted, shaking both the shadows and the light surrounding me. The laughter crescendoed into shrieks as the darkness surged forth, consuming Sarah and my mother, the two figures engulfed in the fray of chaotic sorrow, merging into one unrecognizable mass of despair. In that moment of terror, the abyss opened wide, and I knew I had a choice to make. I could either run, seeking the fleeting light that had betrayed me, or confront the darkness that now howled for my surrender, poised to drag me into its hungry embrace. As I teetered on the precipice of despair and defiance, I felt the shadows claw closer, a terrible, insistent whisper creeping into my mind. You can still join us if you give in. It felt like an invitation to eternal suffering, and yet as I stared back into the swirling void, I sensed something shifting within. I inhaled deeply, preparing to unleash the emotion rolling over me, the pain begging for release. But before I could speak, the ground trembled anew, and from the depths, a dreadful truth reverberated through the air, icy and clear: you're already one of us. The weight of my realization bore down on me like a leaden shroud. I tried to focus on the flicker of light that beckoned from beyond the chaos, but the shadows felt as if they were tightening around me in anthropomorphic embrace of anguish. With each moment, I could feel the visceral grip of fear and shame twisting my insides. You're already one of us, the echo of the abyss taunted, its sinister melody curdling my blood. Instinctively, I ripped my gaze from the darkness and searched for a way to escape. The fractured world around me shifted unnaturally. Once familiar sights now warped grotesquely. Walls oozed a thick, dark ichor, distorted faces emerged from it, their mouths frozen in silent screams, eyes brimming with a desperation that mirrored my own. I stumbled backward, my heart racing with terror and despair, each frantic step amplifying the cacophony of haunted whispers that echoed around me. Don't run. A voice cut through, sharp as a knife. It was Sarah, now liberated seemingly from the shadows that had consumed her. They're watching, waiting for you to falter. Do not let them trick you. But before I could respond, the ground cracked and yawned wide, pulling at my feet. I teetered on the edge, caught in a battle between self-preservation and a haunting pull to the familiar shapes rising from the abyss, figures cloaked in the same darkness that haunted my past. I could make out the details: a child with a teddy bear, a figure I recognized as a long-lost classmate, the contours of my family blending in with the shadows. They beckoned, weaving through the void, each face a tumultuous reminder of what I had neglected, what I had lost. My pulse quickened as I saw their mouths move, but no sound emerged, only the churning chaos around me translated their gestures into cold hatred and longing. Join us, they whispered, voices intertwining like tendrils of smoke, coiling around my sanity. You left us behind, but we will never leave you. Then, as if reacting to my fear, the shadows twisted and condensed further into a monstrous form. It loomed larger than all of my regrets combined, its eyes deep, hollow void stared into my soul. I could feel its rancid breath washing over me, filled with the stench of decay, and the air grew thick with despair. What was once whispers morphed into a guttural cacophony, hurling accusations like daggers. You abandoned your friends, your family, your happiness. Now it's time to pay the price. No. I shrieked, but the sound was swallowed by the vortex of clamoring voices that surrounded me. Every syllable I uttered was drowned out, each echo mocking my futile protests. Desperate, I turned my back on the encroaching malice and ran blindly into the thrumming darkness. I felt unyielding cold chasing me, but my instinct urged me forward. I surged past gathering shadows, phantoms that clawed at my flesh, trying to pull me back. Just as the darkness coiled around my ankles, I collided with something solid, a mirror, its glass warped and cracked, reflecting the fractured shards of my memories. It wavered as I pulled back, revealing a shimmering vista behind each, a flickering scene from my childhood, untouched by the shadows. My fingers grazed the surface, and instantly, I was thrown into the past, a sunlit day in the park, laughter that sounded so genuine it cracked something dormant within me. I saw my mother, smiling without the ghost of shadow lurking behind her eyes. That a primal urge to stay overwhelmed me, but a cold realization pierced the moment. This was a trick, a snare woven from the very fabric of my heart's deepest longings. I jerked my hand away, and the mirage dissolved instantly, replaced by shadows that roared in fury. Foolish child! They screeched, their voices a thunderstorm of resentment. You think you can escape? A crack split open in the mirror, revealing what lay behind, a swirling mass of souls trapped, their faces contorted in horror, mouths stretched into silent screams yearning for breath. I staggered back in terror, my face paling at the sight. But then, amidst the writhing chaos, a familiar outline clouded my vision. It was my mother again, her figure now a ghostly apparition reaching out as if to guide me to the semblance of safety. You have the power, my love. Don't let them win. Every ounce of fear nudged me toward compliance, but her voice twisted into a pull that resonated beyond the abyss. The strength of our connection transcended the darkness. With a final breath, I grasped at something within me, something emergent and potent. I focused hard, flooding my heart with determination. The very shadows that sought to smother me shrieked in protest, thrashing violently in response to my awakening. But just as clarity unfurled its wings within me, the mirror shattered with a deafening crack, splintering reality itself. The shards reflected not only the twisted souls but also a glimpse of something beyond the veil, a nightmarish landscape now gnawed at the edges of my mind. Join us. A voice seethed from the darkness, its tone curdling my stomach. You cannot fight who you are, and before my very eyes, figures began to rise from the fragments of glass, their bodies melding seamlessly with the shadows around me. I felt my heart seize as the realization dawned. Those weren't just reflections, they were every version of myself I had ever abandoned, every part of my life that had been swallowed by my refusal to face the truth. Don't fight it. Sarah screamed, her form solidifying with a despairing intensity, her eyes pleading. You are already one with the shadows. Accept it. In that moment of unreal clarity, the abyss beckoned one last time, luring me toward its depths. My heart thudded violently, weighing the fleeting hope against the oppressive heaviness of inevitable despair, and just as I began to succumb, a piercing scream reverberated through the chaos, a cry not of the shadows, but of another presence deep within the void. Don't give in. You belong above. But as darkness slammed around me, clasping my heart in freezing tendrils, I could feel my grasp slipping from the thin thread of light. The shadows roared, and the laughter of the damned filled my ears, drowning out everything as I realized the truth I had dreaded most. There would be no salvation, no escape. Just then, an icy grip locked around my throat, squeezing harder, plunging my vision into darkness. As I fought to breathe, a chilling whisper echoed directly into my mind, you will never awaken from this nightmare. The darkness closed in, thick and viscous, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud as my vision dimmed. Panic surged through my veins as the grip tightened, cutting off my air and my thoughts, dragging me deeper into the abyss. Just as despair threatened to overload my senses, fragments of light flickered behind my closed eyelids, insistent, persistent. Don't succumb. An internal voice pleaded, urging me to fight. With every ounce of strength, I clawed at the tangible tendrils constricting my throat, desperation igniting a fire within me. But each effort only deepened my entrapment. The shadows reveled in my struggle, their laughter vibrating through the air like an ominous chorus. Suddenly, the grip relented. I gasped, drawing air laced with the metallic tang of fear as I stumbled, disoriented, into a disquieting landscape that stretched endlessly around me. The world had morphed, the ground beneath became a mirage, shifting like quicksand. Figures materialized from the fog, their forms indistinct but profoundly familiar. Welcome back, they whispered, haunting remnants of my past. With every breath, I was assaulted by sense of nostalgia, damp earth, forgotten rooms, the fragrance of my childhood home. Yet, each scent turned rancid as dread seeped back into my soul, vivid memories sunk like stones into murky waters. Images of my mother faded and darkened, her loving face transformed into a gaunt visage etched with despair. You see how they've tainted our love? She lamented, her voice cracking like glass. You're not fighting them, you're fighting yourself. Suddenly, the ground shuddered violently, almost laughing in mockery of my plight. They lie. Another voice pierced the weighty silence. It was Sarah, her face a twisted mask of urgency. Shadows lashed out, eviscerating the likenesses of our loved ones as if they were nothing more than illusions woven into the chaos. They feed on your pain. Fight back. Don't be swayed by their ghastly images. With her words flaring like a lighthouse calling to a ship amid a storm, the haze of fog circled us tighter, merging with wailing silhouettes that clawed at reality. I stumbled, wrestling with my memories, the specters swirling like smoke. His laughter echoed, a childhood friend snatched away too soon, each figure melted into the void before me, and with it, the remnants of my hope. Exile yourself from this treachery. Sarah screamed, and just as I turned my back on the phantoms, flashes of the glass shards returned, each depicting grotesque replays of my life choices, hints of opportunities lost that echoed with chilling finality. The landscape rippled, and a silhouette emerged from the depths of despair. It was Mion of my faces, drawn and hollow, abstract in its torment. You think you can escape your own fate? It jeered, its voice a cruel mockery that slashed through my spine. You were always meant to join the shadows. In that ink-black void, I clawed at the tendrils of fate that reached hungrily toward me. I wrestled against their gravity, each pull reliving the pain I thought I had escaped. Your truth will devour you, my doppelganger spat, inches from my face. You cannot exist between lights, the dark is all there is, and you are but a wisp of its collection. No. I cried, desperation spilling over. I refuse to be what you say. Each defiant declaration echoed in the swirling madness, and the contorted faces of my past began to fade, swept away by my refusal to surrender. But then they surged back, faces contorted with rage. Do you think you can deny your fate? They howled, and the air turned electric, thickening with the scent of blood, a palpable dread rife with unfulfilled desires. We are a part of you. Every choice unmade, every love unloved. You cannot erase us. Shocked at the realization, I staggered back, colliding with the glass shards once more. The reflections and remnants started to fuse into horrific shapes. The mirror format revealed a crucial truth. The darkness was their crafting, born from deep-seated guilt and regret, demanding me to make a choice between two horrid paths. The choice loomed like a gaping chasm, warning me that accepting one would mean merging with the others forever. Just then, the water-like ground bubbled and split, revealing an abyss deeper than any of us had fathomed, filled with writhing shadows and mouths that opened to devour. In the clamor, I stole a glance at Sarah. She stood firm yet trembling, desperately reaching toward me as if to breach the widening void. You are stronger than this. They want to drag you down. Believe in the light that exists inside of you. But just as I took a breath, preparing to respond, shadows erupted, serving as a spine-chilling warning. They lunged for her, claws of darkness ripping through the space between us. No! I screamed, feeling the abyss call for me, relentless. I surged forward, but the grip of the void grew stronger, and with it, the reality around us began to crumble. As Sarah's terrified expression twisted into disbelief, her shifting form collapsed into the gaping maw of shadows. Fight it! She urged, her voice melding with the swirling chaos, growing fainter as darkness engulfed her. I reached, clawed at the last remnants of light, but as her scream faded into an echo, I felt my heart shatter with a finality that swirled the blackness to drown out the truth. I stood, trembling, battling the realization that now, not only was I facing my accusers but the realization I might be losing everything. With the void ready to consume my next steps, I realized too late how close the shadows were to me now, whispering, "Join us, join us, join us." And just as I took the surrendering step, a distant cry broke the spell, echoing out into the darkness, pulsing with a nascent strength that threw everything into chaos. Don't let go. But in that moment, as despair cascaded over me in waves, I could feel myself slipping further away from the light. As if sensing weakness, the shadows flooded in with a renewed hunger, their grip tightening, demanding I yield. In that final heartbeat before all went dark, I gasped, bracing against an irreversible fate, feeling the world crumble beneath me, consumed by chaos. And then, I fell. I awoke, gasping, clawing for breath against the icy grip of the darkness that threatened to consume me. Instinctively, I pushed back, fighting against an unseen weight pressing down on me, laying heavy in the suffocating void. For a fleeting moment, I heard Creepiest's haunting chorus riding the boundary between clarity and madness. But I wasn't ready to succumb. I was still here. Flashes of flickering light swirled before my eyes, illuminating wisps of shadows that seemed to dance tauntingly around me. I blinked, fighting through the disorientation that clung to my consciousness. The darkness was pulling back, and as I strained to see, I heard that distant melody tugging at the fringes of my memory, an innocent tune that mocked my fears. I willed myself to rise, to break through the chains of past decisions that bound me to my torment. Where was I? An echoing silence hung in the air, thick with a familiarity I could not shake off, seeping into my skin like an oily taint. I stumbled forward, limbs trembling beneath me, the ground shifting like quicksand, revealing flashes of other worlds beneath, moments of glee and despair dancing tantalizingly within my grasp. As the haze dissipated, I stood before a mirror, cracked and splintered, revealing grotesque reflections of myself, half-formed memories fading in and out, fragments of my past circling like vultures waiting for a kill. I felt them clawing at my mind, each face beckoning, my mother, lost friends, even Ethan. Their yearning whispers collapsed, specters of regret around me, tugging at my heart like the impending doom of a tidal wave. Join us, the voices reverberated, filling my head with sharp pangs of guilt and dread. Just as I prepared to turn away, driven by the spark of inner resolve igniting, Sarah's anguished face broke through the darkness, an apparition emerging from the depths of despair. I am still here, she cried, her voice piercing the oppressive shroud around me. With a desperate lunge, she reached out across the twisting void, her hand offering connection, warmth indexed against a backdrop of nightmares. You must remember. We are not alone. Suddenly, the shadows flickered, revealing chilling hints of enlightenment, a glimmer of clarity in the chaos and convolution. But at that moment, the ground surged, rearing upward, coiling towards Sarah as her scream echoed through the air, stretching, warping, becoming a sharp blade of sound that sliced through my heart. Sarah! I screamed, feeling the emptiness clawing in my chest as I struggled against the very force that bound us to our despair. The darkness roared, its hunger insatiable, and in a deafening crescendo, I felt the shadows coil tighter around my ankles, nudging me toward the abyss yawning beneath me. No. You will never take her. A primitive fury kindled inside me, rising beyond reason, forcing me to lunge toward the mirror, the reflection of all that I had fled from, merging into clarity. The anguish turned to strength as I felt whispers morphing beneath my skin, the souls I had forsaken fueling my determination, a smoldering coalition of grief and hope. With a primal scream, I reached through the mirror, shattering its surface like ice under pressure. The echoes of the carnival howled around me as the barriers buckled, breaking apart beneath the traumas piled high. Forced into the light of my reckoning, memories surged forth, intertwining, illuminating the figures of everyone I had lost, Ethan, my mother, Sarah, all of them. That I could see them clearly, now hollow specters that hung between two realms, yearning for freedom. Their faces morphed from anguish to horrified surprise, realization dawning that this wasn't an escape, but a confrontation. It's time to face this together, I whispered, holding out my trembling hand. The shadows paused, recoiling as their grip weakened, the cries of the lost echoing softly through time. Face what? The amalgam shifted, its eyes narrowing. You think they will follow you? And then, as if rehearsed by my deepest fears, the grotesque faces poured in around me, suffocating my resolve. Promises dangled precariously before me. I could feel the power vibrating, the push and pull of consciousness threatening to rip me apart. I closed my eyes and focused. I choose to remember. My heart surged forward, and as the words escaped, the ground trembled beneath me, shadows curdling in response. All of you, I cried out. You won't be lost to me. And with a breath, the moment shattered, a kaleidoscope of memories unfolded in vivid color, the laughter intertwining with the wails, each fleeting light gliding effortlessly through loss. Something ancient and beautiful awakened. My past and my choices melded into a living tapestry painted with honesty, a truth I had pushed aside. Together, I whispered, summoning my courage as I took Sarah's hand, feeling her warmth envelop me. With a single breath, I knew what needed to happen. As the shadows bristled at our connection, mounting a final assault, I forced all the love I'd buried deep into that moment, pushing upward toward the din of blurred faces and memories. Join us. I cried, knowing my strength came not from running away but from acknowledging each pain and joy we shared. Together, we break this cycle. With that declaration, the shadows wavered, blurred faces twisting into smiles as they converged upon me, swirling around like leaves in an autumn breeze. The cacophony of cries transformed into a melody echoing against the walls of fate, intertwining with my voice, linking our existence with the whispers of all who had been lost. The carnival screamed in rage, shadows twisting, surging for one last attempt to swallow us whole. But we were ready. We entwined our voices into a harmonious crescendo, the music alighting a fervor that ignited us with brilliance, tearing through the fabric of despair. We choose to be free. We sang, bound together by pain, love, and shared purpose, and in that luminance, I felt the dark shimmer fade, flickering like a dying candle at the edges of reality. As the world collapsed around us, an insistent whisper caressed my mind, steadying me, lingering long after the silence. Not all truths are terrible. Save your heart for the connections you've made. And just like that, with a blinding flash it shattered. The barriers fell away, and the carnival was no more, but something lingered, waiting in the silence. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the tear-stained cafe, soft sunlight breaking through the windows. But an unsettling sensation clung to me, sending cold tendrils creeping beneath my skin. I marveled at the familiar surroundings, but the uneasiness fell upon me. As I sat in disbelief, I looked toward the corner of the cafe. My heart dropped when I caught a glimpse of a familiar face, a child sipping coffee, gazes hollowed and vacant. Just for that moment, laughter bubbled, and the shadows began to unfurl once more, tenderly whispering, "Welcome back." I stumbled, standing frozen, remembering. The carnival had fallen, but the memories and the shadows had not forgotten.